how to complete one of the Explore parts of Unit 7, Day 30, Quadratic Equations with Irrational Solutions. When you are working on this lesson, you should be thinking about how can we find exact solutions to quadratic equations that are irrational. That's our goal, to be able to answer this question. So we're going to work together on this last one. X squared plus 8/3 x plus 14/9 equals 0. The directions ask you to solve this question using both completing the square and graphing to find the approximate solutions and completing the square to find the exact solutions. And so I, on the next slide, actually created space for myself to work. You don't have this slide, so you can figure out a space to work, or you can always input a slide on yours as well. So let's get started. When completing the square, the first step I'm going to do is subtract 4/9 from both sides so that I can just have move my constant term to the right-hand side and only work with these two terms, which are going to make me a perfect square trinomial. X squared plus 8/3 x equals negative 14/9. Now, in order to complete the square, I'm going to take 8/3 and I'm going to divide it by 2. That's the first step. Except dividing by 2 with fractions or with any number is really the same as just multiplying by 1/2. So I'm going to just multiply this by 1/2 instead. It saves me a step. And that's going to give me 8/6. And then I'm going to simplify 8/6, divide the top and the bottom by 2, and that is going to give me 4/3. Now, the next step is for me to go ahead and square this 4/3. Four-thirds squared. To square a fraction, you're just going to square the numerator and you're going to square the denominator. And we're going to get 16/9. So, in order to complete the square now, we're going to add 16/9 to both sides. X squared plus 8/3 x. And this uses the addition property of equality. If I add it to one side, I have to add it to the other side, and the equation will still be equal. Now I'm going to rewrite this as a perfect square. I'm going to actually go ahead and factor it. It's a perfect square trinomial, so I'm going to rewrite it like this. Right, so 4/3 was the value we found over here. Half of 8/3 is 4/3. The square root of 16 is 4. The square root of 9 is 3. So the square root of 16/9 is 4/3. Negative 14/9 plus 16/9 equals 2/9. Now I'm going to go ahead and solve this equation. We used completing the square. Now we can solve. Square root both sides to undo squaring. When we square root something, we have two answers. So x plus 4/3 equals positive negative square root of 2/9. I'm going to write that in. Positive or negative square root of 2/9. Now I'm going to move the 4/3 over. Using subtraction property of equality, x equals positive negative square root of 2/9 minus 4/3. Actually, let me... And I'll fill in that little positive negative square root of. And then we also can use the commutative property and move the 4/3 to the front. And just say negative 4/3 plus or minus the square root of 2/9. So we can go on the regular calculator. You can go on a Google calculator You can type this into the calculator, and you're going to get two approximate solutions. X equals negative 0.862 or negative 1.805. And I'm going to actually draw little squiggles here because that tells me it's approximately that. Now that I have my two approximate solutions and I solved this, I'm going to go ahead and graph it and see if my approximate solutions match on the graph. So I'm going to clear all my drawings. And I'm going to hop down to the next slide because I have those same drawings right here for us to view. There we go. There's our answers. So I'm going to hop to the graphing calculator. Right here. Okay. And I'm just going to enter the equation from the beginning into the graphing calculator. Y equals x squared plus 8/3 x plus 14/9. And then I'm going to click here. And I'm going to click here. And you should notice that these two values are the same as the two values we found when we solved using completing the square. Now again, these are approximate solutions because if you actually input this into the calculator, let's look at it. Negative 4/3. I'm just going to do it in steps. Negative 4/3 plus the square root of 2/9. That's 1. If you notice here, it wasn't just negative 0.862. It's negative 0.86192, and it will keep going on forever because it's irrational. And then instead of plus that, we could have done minus, and you would get negative 1.805 with a non-terminating decimal. So the big question here for you to ask yourself is, what are the benefits of using the calculator, right? Super fast, super quick. What are the downsides of using the calculator? Well, these aren't going to give us exact solutions. What are the benefits of completing the square? Well, we have this very exact solution right here. Once we get to here, now we have non-exact solutions. But this is very exact, and we cannot get this answer on the calculator. Okay. So in summary, completing the square or graphing are two different strategies you can use to solve quadratic equations. Completing the square is going to give you a more exact solution. Graphing is going to give you a more efficient solution.